Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a Sunday school session for you. Now, today I believe this is session number 3, and I have to be first transparent. Well, first things first. This is going to be some sensitive information. It's a little bit of a sensitive topic, so trigger warning is in full effect. But also, I have to give a disclaimer that I was a little bit resistant to the message today, or at least what I was feeling led to share, because number one, it's a bit of a throwback to something that I had written almost over a year ago. That happened almost a year ago. And also, I was just looking to keep it fresh and have some new inspiration. But as I was waiting for new inspiration, nothing was coming. Like all week long, I wasn't hearing anything particularly pronounced as to what the message was today. Or, usually there's a nudge in my spirit that says, okay, that's what we talk about. But I wasn't hearing that even all day today. I was feeling a little sluggish, I even took a nap in the middle of the day, and I usually don't do that. I usually try to get to work early and then enjoy the rest of my Sunday or whatever day it is. I try to handle responsibilities first. But I just wasn't feeling motivated, and I think it was just coupled with the resistance of me wanting to share something different or new or fresh. And I was just like, well, I want to do a message today, but what's the message, Spirit? And it's like, you have the message already. I didn't told you, girl, what the message is. So I haven't added anything because I also feel a little led to just kind of go with Spirit by way of whatever gets to be added on to this, because as you'll see, it's something that is older. So just flow with me is all that I'm asking. I'm not going to keep you long at all today. I don't even have that many notes to share. I don't know where Spirit is going to lead beyond what's in my notes, but if you'll bear with me, hopefully we will both, receive some revelation and some new way. That's always my prayer. So charge it to the head and not to the heart if mission is not accomplished, because that's definitely my intention. But yes, the message for today is so first I'll tell you that this is in regards to Shanquella Robinson. I'm sure that name rings bells. But if it doesn't, it's the young lady that went on vacation with her friends and never came home, or at least didn't come home the same way that she left, unfortunately. So that's the reason that there's some trigger warnings. If you'll see, I'm not sure if you can see from down here, but I wrote this back on November 18th, 2022. That's around, I think it was kind of like right after the time that this news had started to circulate of this incident. And I just felt vexed in my spirit. This was before, there was much detail that was starting to come out. And I just felt vexed in my spirit about this story. And I knew that there had to be something just off, that it just felt off to me. And so these are the notes that I wrote, and it also transitioned into another thing that I posted most recently called Crimes Against Humanity. And I felt guided to now that was a little bit more recent. That was in June of this month that I actually posted an afterword message on this channel. But I never posted the Shanquella Robinson notes because I don't know, like back then I wasn't really posting that much in that regard anyway on my other channel, where I don't know, it was a strange time at that time, and I felt guided to take the notes, but I didn't feel guided to share. And at the time when I posted Crimes Against Humanity, something said to still halt, because it was always connected, and I knew it was, but something still told me to hold off on what I had written all that, those months ago. But now is the nudge to share it. So it's choppy because this is not me scribing for the purposes of sharing. This was just me writing down, literally just scribing as it came up. So just bear with it as you will. Shanquella Robinson, 11/18/22 was the date. Envious friends, jealous of star power, plotted on her happiness individually and collectively. One friend, BFF, manipulates group against Shanquella. Competition was already brewing, may have been an underlying thought to outcast her on the trip. BFF perceived the unexpected opportunity to coerce a fight or attack for immediate gratification, and it blew up out of control. He leaked the fight video after suspicion. New moon in Scorpio was 1025 at that time, more like a full moon, death magic energy. Past plots to destroy her covertly failed. BFF couldn't resist delight in her pain. This trip uncovered the hate behind the scenes. She didn't know she was a sheep amongst wolves. Her resistance to fight was fear, shock, and sadness. There's one honest man in the crew, Razir. He wants to tell the truth to authorities. They want to silence him, using the RAPE story to discredit him. They wanted to set him up for the fall, but things got sloppy. May be a deeper connection between Shanquella and Razir. Shanquella's spirit ain't going without justice. This incident sheds light on darker truth, trafficking and harvesting, sacrifice. Mexico was obliged to rule alcohol poisoning, underground ring that preys on foreign travelers to traffic or organ harvest. If bodies go unclaimed, they are sold for parts. High officials involved. FBI ? Okay, just a question mark. Organs used for spiritual and practical magic. Doesn't appear that operations are aligned. One vampiric agenda was set to fuel the force. It got cut short by all of the media attention. Powers that be are going to try to hide behind the group as the scapegoat. The group carries primary responsibility, but the incident is revealing a darker truth, crimes against humanity. Shanquella acting as angel spirit to uncover mysteries of Mexico and foreign lands to help prevent future victims and vindicate displaced souls. This story will serve justice on an even more grand scale. Now, that's what I wrote back then, again, before a lot of details were starting to surface of who was what and how and what, all of that. That's just what came out. So some of the details that I shared here, even about Razir, I don't even know how he ended up faring in the end. Well, none of them really faced any charges, which is interesting enough, right? But at least not that I remember, or was dropped or something like that. So consider that first it was like a hench mob out against the friends, and of course they did bear responsibility because they committed the acts with their own hands. But it was like they were propped up as the poster children for these egregious acts, and then all of a sudden, it all kind of fell to the wayside. Nobody was charged. I'm sure their lives individually are not sensational at this point, just karma being the bitch that it is. But it's just interesting now in hindsight to look back at the fact that there wasn't any action taken, but they were used almost as like a distraction in a sense, because what I was really picking up subtly at that time was more so it being like a whistle blow against the underground atrocities that have been happening probably certainly much longer than up until Shanquella's demise, but that are set to be justified at this point in time, and to be stopped, for that energy to be balanced and harmonized, not just for those that may be victimized in the future, but for those that have been victimized and, have kind of just been swept away into the abyss. There's so many, if you really do the research, there's so many young ladies particularly that just get lost in translation overseas in different places, not just Mexico, obviously, but it's something deeper and darker that's going on account of just like harvesting feminine energy, and particularly melanated feminine energy for different reasons and purposes, and marginalized people that, as I said, may or may not be able to afford to transport their loved ones from these places, or that just, are by design not as highly cared for, in the sense that, who's going to either bother to really put the pedal to the metal to find them. Like, she could have, if she wasn't with the friends and things didn't kind of blow up as they did, she could have gotten lost in the system somehow, and they could have even claimed her to have been kidnapped, which happens a lot. Have been kidnapped, or to have been have disappeared in some regard, and there could have been no trace of her. Thankfully, there was, and because of the trace, there's the case, not just in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, and that's why I felt like her experience in particular was to, like, if you even remember her picture where she's kind of sitting there on her knees, and there's like this light around her, that one picture that they kept showing with the long hair that was coming down and all that. And you could, when you got to know more of her story, you could tell that she was kind of like the standout amongst her crew, where she had her own business going, was pretty productive and prosperous in her own right, probably a young divine feminine, or a developing divine feminine in some regard. And her energy was cut short on account of jealousy, envy. It's like not an uncommon story at all, but these energies that are more intimate to the divine feminine, that are putting their hands to the plow to actually do the work, the oppression and suppression, and in this case, actual attack, are just hosts of a darker energy in general that is working for an even darker and demonic force, and dare I say source. The system itself is helping to fuel this vibration continuously. I still don't holistically know exactly what, the underworkings are, like I've mentioned, and I do have my Crimes Against Humanity here that I am going to read off again, because many of you probably didn't watch that video, although it was a pretty highly viewed video early on when I first started this channel, which was surprising to me in a sense, because usually people, this isn't the first time that I share notes and scribe in the way that I am now. And sometimes people don't tune into that as much as they do the cards, because the cards are more exciting and yada, yada, yada. But a lot of people really tapped into that one early on. When I first started the channel, it had at that time more views than I even had subscribers, at that time. So there's a more sinister plot going on here. And I've been kind of talking about it in the ways that I've been talking about the divine feminine, and how, this dark energy has been ultimately plotting on her demise, maybe perhaps since the beginning of time, unbeknownst to us, not just on the dark feminine, but also it comes in the seed of corruption, even amongst the friends themselves, like the henchmen of the group, as I identified it as one of the BFFs. It was a masculine energy ultimately that kind of doused that fire, that was the one carrying the bones back and forth as to what the reason was for persecuting Shanquella in the first place. Whatever it was, whether it was somebody messing with somebody's boyfriend, or whatever the story was, or somebody setting up somebody's brother, it was something convoluted, but it was a masculine energy that was in the midst of rallying that force against her, while she was just completely unaware, like didn't even know that she was on the chopping block, that she was to be a sacrifice in that way. I'm thoughtful as to whether or not they actually meant to cause her ultimate demise, or if it was just that spirit that just got out of control, which is usually the case in these group situations where there's one commonality, maybe perhaps to all kind of attack this one friend or one target, to bring them down, because there's some objectification for it that's made amongst the group. Whether, it's usually the source of it is some type of jealousy or resentment, but there's usually some justification propped up in the forefront as to why it's justified, to take these actions against this person. But a lot of times it's on account of manipulation within the group by, like I said, another source who has a more diabolical plan that rallies up those forces collectively by whispering in ears as the adverse energy does, like, she never really liked you, going to each one like, she did this to you 2 years ago. She told me that she not really, she's only friends with you because of X, Y, and Z. Or, she always talks shit about, like going to each one, being very, very specific and intentional, like about the manipulation to get a personal buy-in to this bigger plot, and I don't even know where I'm going with this, but that's what was going on here ultimately, is that her head was on a stake and she didn't even know it. It probably was that way even when they were back home, that little things were happening, little plots and plans, little jabs here and there, and because that's what happens a lot of times, especially with the divine feminine. She too busy loving and lighting that she sometimes can't even see the darkness around her until it's almost too late. And then in her case, she was in such a shock that she didn't even have the strength to fight back. Like, she was completely caught off guard. If you remember, she just sat there and took blow after blow, because she was probably so shocked and saddened by the fact that she was on the brunt of this attack and had no idea that she was, that she was even the target. And that's what has happened in the lives of many individuals. And it kind of happens in a way when you do start to elevate or you start to change your perspective in some way, shape, or form. In her case, it was probably more of a material agitation amongst the group because she was self-sufficient, she had her own business, she was doing well and, pretty established for her young years, and probably hanging around other girls and guys that were aspiring to that, but maybe hadn't quite reached that level, or even just her having the light that she had, which was evident in every picture that was shown. If they all were on the same page, all having their own business, there's still something about that inner light that sometimes draws dissension, that draws the darkness out of other people, and you never even see it coming. So I think one thing for sure, in a practical sense, that we got a wake-up call about back when this situation happens, it was definitely the idea that you just really got to be careful who you calling friend, who you riding out for, riding with, or who you think is riding out with you and for you may not always be the case underneath the surface and behind the scenes. For all of those kids to have some issue with her to the point where not only did those take the action, like I said the other day, the aggravated assault in that reading that came up yesterday, to actually do something by way of their jealousy and envy. But then the others that stood by and watched, not only just stood by and watched, but actually recorded it, filmed it, and were entertained by her suffering. This is something that happens on a small scale. Like I said, this was just her, unfortunately, being the angel, like almost a supernova, to kind of shed light on a much darker experience in real time. Not just in the intimate sense, but even on the grander scale with these organizations that are working in some capacity and in some way, shape, and form to harvest off of the demise of unsuspecting souls such as Shanquella. Feminine energy that have potential, have star power, have a light within them that shines outside of them, that have some prospect of a future, that are independent, that I don't know if I said that already, that have some sense of security in themselves, maybe perhaps all of that being an indication that there's some anointing on their lives, that they may actually be a star seed of some sort, you get surrounded by the demonic forces in a way. And I don't know if it's just by design or if it's just aligned that way naturally, because as I said, your light is kind of an attractive force for darkness in some ways. They want to see how it works and they want to try to put it out or steal it for themselves. They want to, siphon it. People want to be around those that have something of value to bring to the table, especially if they don't feel like they do, so it's like a manipulation tactic and all that good stuff. So it's deeper than that though. And then when we get to the crimes of humanity, I'm just going to read, this was on 6/21/23. So 6-7 months later is when I sat down and wrote these things, and it's energy harvesting through all the 5 pillars, which I wrote down somewhere, but I'm not going to flip for it right now. Organ harvesting, human trafficking, plus, source separation through false indoctrination, formidable force through fear, induced scarcity, poverty, codependence, and violence, spiritual separation through energy siphoning, mental manipulation, again on all 5 pillars, greed, capitalist capitalism, racism, classism, sexism, misogyny, ageism, miseducation and educational inequality, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, medical manipulation, monopoly, malpractice, abuse of marginalized masses, especially economically, also emotionally, psychologically, energetically, etc., imbalanced justice system and corruption, gatekeeping, gorging entertainment industry, narcissistic neurosis, diabolical drug distribution, multi-dimensional generational genocide, which, as I said, could have been part of that in her regard, earth environmental abuse, media information manipulation, manipulation of positions of power, angelic force assassination, divine union destruction and separation, larceny of intellectual property, land, and assets, invasion of privacy for capital consumption, creative corruption. Yeah, and that was it. And this was the afterword message. And the 5 pillars that I know was right here: business, education, entertainment, religion, and politics, all connected. Yeah, I'm not going to read all that though. If you want to get into the afterword, you want to get into more of the crimes against humanity message, that's way back down in June sometime, and it's called Afterword Crimes Against Humanity. It won't be hard to miss at all. There's probably a notebook in that thumbnail, most likely. But these are the things that are happening on a deeper, darker, higher, more expansive scale. Like what we see was propped up in the news are like I said, are situations such as this, where we go into the angry mob mode against the 5, I think it was 5 of them that were involved in this situation, failing to actually see what's going on behind the curtain, that they're just almost like my message yesterday, just puppets in this freaking show, that it's just, look at this, meanwhile this is what's really going on. And ultimately they even became a sacrifice because, like I said, now their lives are completely ruined in some regard. They can't ever be taken seriously by people that they knew, that they are acquainted with or associated with, because they're always going to be wearing this like scarlet letter. Even the ones that like Razir, perhaps, who came a day later. Now I don't know now in hindsight how dirty his hands were, but he came a day later and was kind of like caught up in the chaos on the back end. Were there more things that he could have done to bring more medical attention to her aid, or to alert authorities or blow the whistle? Who knows? Nobody knows at this point because we weren't there. But just the sheer fact that he wasn't even there for the actual act of the crime, and still he has to wear that stain too. And that's exactly how it goes, with these energies that find themselves swept away into these secret societies and covens, and even in the industry happenings and dealings that you feel like you have to contribute to, or you just get caught up into contributing to because you're in the room, or you want to be in the room, or you want to be in one in the number, or you want to advance your career. Like, it's just the subtle ways that we get caught up into diabolical antics that can ultimately lead to an extension of damnation, if not a lifetime of it. You know, I'm not damning these kids. I'm calling them kids because I know they're so much younger than me, but I'm not damning these young people to hell because of the mistake they made on that day. Who knows? Like I said, it could have been a spirit running rampant that they just allowed to just take control over their human being, you know? And there is redemption for that. Truly, people can turn around from those ways and make different choices and shift their mindset and cleanse their spirits. And I hope that they certainly all have, especially almost a year later. But it's just like that stain still follows you in ways that may linger long after you've actually even changed your life, you know, and changed your mentality about life. But now, unfortunately, Shanquella is not here to benefit from that shift, you know. So I feel like her spirit lingers on even in this moment, because there's still a message to be shared in regards to how you protect yourself amongst those that you call family and friends, and even foes, because some people openly expose themselves to people, places, and things that they know they're not welcome in, just for the sake of, as I've said, of being what do you call it, being included, you know, being accepted, being one in the number. As I've said, you don't want to be left out, or you don't want to miss out, so you still keep hanging around people that you know, and deep in your spirit you can feel an unrest with, or dis-ease with, or after you leave them you feel depleted, or you know, your energy is low, or you don't feel like you can completely trust them with everything. These are the emotional cues in our body that are signposts to tell us to protect ourselves or remove ourselves in one way, shape, or another. And unfortunately, as in the case with Shanquella, sometimes we don't listen before it's too late. And all on account of, at the end of the day, like kind of superficial mentalities. I almost said psychedelic. Maybe so, you know, just kind of being off balance and not really living in the truth of your presence and what's really going on in real time, that you push those emotions and those feelings off and don't take them seriously, to know, like, no, there's a reason why I feel this way. It's not, yeah, this may be my family, but I'm feeling a discomfort for some reason, and I have to honor that. Yeah, we might have been friends for 20 years, but I don't really get the sense. I feel like they celebrate more of my drama than they do my successes. You know, when you get friends like that they want to hear more about what's going wrong in your life than they do about what's going right. That's another cue. You know what I mean? That they're there for every last bit of drama that's ever happened, but let stuff start going well and you hardly even hear from them, or they hardly ever tell you, like, good job, you're doing great, you know what I mean, or I'm real proud of you, I'm happy for you. You know, you just gotta be mindful, because the spirit, the adverse energy right now is definitely kicking ass and taking names, you know, like kicking that, what's the saying, like whooping ass and asking questions later, whatever that saying is. Like, it's like you could get caught up in the most subtle circumstances just on account of not listening to your soul, not listening to that spiritual aspect of you, but being more influenced by your carnal nature, you know, and that could be your ultimate demise, unfortunately. And in the deeper aspect of all this, it definitely speaks to, as I've been talking about, just wanting to keep the potential powers that be, i.e., the people, we the people, divine people in particular, suppressed by way of hopelessness. So this story not only was a prop that, caused unrest about your friendships and about who you can trust versus who you can't, it also, it was used in a sense to incite rage against the five and also incite fear. That's what the front end of the message did, so that we were so consumed with our own emotional turmoil about the situation, and really like the sensationalism of the experience, of the account of this crime, that we couldn't possibly objectify any source deeper or higher or behind it all. And that happens a lot, in media particularly, where we get sensationalized and incited to an emotional response, to be enraged, to be sad, to be depressed, to be afraid, to be resistant, perhaps even to traveling, to be resistant to experiencing new things, to be resistant to even wanting to share your successes out loud or in public for fear of what the response or resistance might be. All of that energy in a dark way works to be a suppressive force against the masses, to keep you contained yet again, and keep a limitation over your life. So, as I said, with you operating in that sense of fear, you limit yourself. Like they don't even have to do that much work, and then what that does is it erodes the ethereal nature of the human being, meaning your spiritual essence, so that you don't shine as bright. And what does that mean? You become more of a prime target to do exactly what was used against you in the first place, to either filter your energy to some other, for the purposes of that dark force, to do what's more beneficial for you to do for it, to contribute to its force, again, by way of fear and rage and anger and all those other things. Now you can become more of a servant or even a slave to that system, and you can almost be like herded to some desirable outcome, whether it be to not travel so much, to stay your ass in the house, stay home, whether it be to be even more disconnected from, because for instance, with Shanquella, she may have thrived more vibrantly amongst friends that actually were vibing on her level, but she never really got the opportunity to find her tribe in that regard, because she was captivated probably by emotional attachment and familiarity and all that good stuff. So if she had perhaps survived, just hypothetically speaking, it might have set her into a spirit of fear to never want to be vulnerable to anybody else again, when meanwhile her tribe is out there waiting to enhance her spiritual light and waiting for her to be an enhancement to theirs. That's also what ultimately this speaks to, in a word, is gang stalking, the actual energy that Shanquella experienced. They just took it to a whole new level with the physical aggression. But as I said, I can almost guarantee that there were things going on behind the scenes and behind her back that she just had no idea about, and it just all, or she did, and she suppressed it in some ways, and it all just came to a head on this trip in an uncontrollable instance. But is that energy there, where there are multiple things that are happening to certain individuals unbeknownst to them, that just kind of keep them in this containment, or are meant to do that? I think the upside is that, especially on account, if for me anyway, for sure, like her spirit, but her story definitely spoke to me in a different way. And I guess because I could see some synergy in my own experiences, that thank God I have escaped in some ways and shapes and forms beyond what she was able to do. I was able to see it from a more objective view, that what was meant to keep me contained and make me feel isolated, make me feel insecure to share my story or share my light with anyone, to share my ideas for fear of them being, taken or stolen or defiled in some way, shape, or form, to share my intimacy with another partner in any way, shape, or form, to share my professional ideas, to expand my horizons, to trust anyone at all in this life, because I've gone through that where I've been contained and isolated in ways where I trusted no one. It allowed me to see that, the value of finding a balance, a happy medium between being secure in your energy in a safe way and trusting your spiritual discernment. It's a great divide between the two, because you can veer into being almost, in some regards, like being paranoid, not just by the ways of what you uncover in your intimate life, but then when you start to actually see it on a broader scale, as I did, it can make you go into recluse in a sense. And that's probably just as bad, if not worse, than being vulnerable to all the wolves and all the hounds, because when you're too afraid to let your light shine, then nobody wins. You don't win, because that's what ultimately keeps your vibration going. And people that are actually destined to connect with your light and deserve to don't win, because they don't get to experience it. So it's like, that's like the ploy, the dark ploy behind the scenes on every level, high, low, far and wide, to incite a fear in divine beings that do have something of value to offer and are willing and able to express it, to keep us from wanting to do so on account of how we're going to be persecuted in response. You know what I mean? And yeah, the energy is out there and definitely on the prowl. But when you are of a spirit of trust for yourself, that discernment, like I said, she probably had cues all along as to how there was an imbalance in her relationships. The first point of action is trusting yourself enough to respond to those cues. We, unfortunately, that's how a lot of the energy works, with the propaganda that's being projected, because it makes you feel untrustworthy, that if you have a thought outside of what's the common, the conventional idea, or something a little bit out of the box, or, God forbid, you have intuition or any psychic potential or power or anything like that, it's like a pushback on society, again, from an intimate level and a general level, to make you feel like you're the crazy one. No, you're tripping. You're paranoid. You're anxious. You're doing too much. You're whatever. Like, it's always an over exertion of your emotional essence, which that is the very thing that will save your life. So if you can be discredited by way of how you feel and what your signs and signals are telling you is real, then you'll ultimately distrust yourself. It's like a Eight of Swords energy, where you're blocked and bound, where you could see, you could take the blindfold off, you could unloose your hands, but you feel stuck and stagnant in one place, enemies all around, all those swords around, but you feel completely helpless and insecure to do anything about it, because you don't feel like you can trust your own mental and psychological prowess to respond. It's like the biggest gaslighting of all, like really. It truly is. And like I said, it happens on a personal, intimate level, and it happens on a large scale with our media, with the propaganda that we see day to day, that makes you feel like, that censors you if you say something, even on YouTube, where you feel censored just to say certain words that are real ass words. Like, these are things that people are actually going through or have faced in some regard. And you feel censored to say it for sake of so-called triggering, but it really to me is, again, yet another ploy to contain spirits that have something important to say. Because if you're always caught up in your mind about, oh, I can't say this, I can't say that, I got to start spelling it out or making up funny words as to what I mean, then you're always kind of going to be in your head, contemplating instead of allowing your words to flow freely as the spirit wants to flow. You always are kind of going to be on guard, for how you express yourself, which in essence does impact the message because it's not flowing naturally, whether you want to believe it or not. And yeah, spiritual people, well, not even just spiritualists, because everybody has to experience it. Everybody is feeling that censorship in one way, shape, or form. But I feel like it hits the spiritualists the hardest because, like I said, we're speaking power to truth, as I like to say, as opposed to truth to power. And you don't need to be impaired when you're doing that. You need to be able to flow naturally and not have to second guess. It's just as much as it brings an insecurity to your expression, just as these things in a natural form bring an insecurity to how you live your everyday life. It's just all like compounded one onto another until ultimately you just say, man, F it. Like I ain't saying nothing, you know what I mean? Or you start to censor your message so much that the truth of it all is kind of lost in translation and it doesn't quite reach who it's supposed to reach. So I don't even know why I'm saying all that, but I guess I guess that the point of me being urged to share this today is just to be cautious because perhaps, there's a lot that's being uncovered by way of exposure of things that, it's justice season with Libra in full effect, but right around the corner is Scorpio season. And I spoke in my message yesterday that the angel of death, that's bringing strong endings, maybe not in the physical sense, but that's bringing all things to a close, is definitely out and about. And is justifiably Roman at this time. So it's not like, it's just this force that's looking to take anybody out that's just called out after 11 p.m., but if you do get called out there, meaning outside of the sanctity of your spirit, because you're answering to a vibration that is not organic and innate of supreme source, your highest calling and supreme source, that is, you could get caught out. You could get kind of caught slipping. And it happens in the most subtle ways, like I said, just as subtle as Shanquella going on a vacation with people that don't really care for her, that she probably in some regard had an inkling didn't, to you adhering to even so-called government policies and propagandas and what do you call it, like mandates and such that your spirit does not agree with, but you feel like you have to do it, or you feel like you're painted into a corner to just go along to get along. Maybe even, surroundingly so, like you don't want to be the odd man out, which happened a lot, dare I say, with COVID, even with those vaccines and things. There were people that didn't really feel all that comfortable about it for whatever their reason was. And I'm not coming down on anybody for their choice unless it was inauthentic. There were people that didn't want to do it, but they felt like they had to, whether it was for their job or they felt socially pressured to do so. They felt like if they didn't, they were somehow endangering others, which was also manipulation. Just one small example on a grander scale. But because there's an awakening happening right here, right now, people are going to be more, such as an energy as this, someone that has great power potential. People are becoming more of a target for just how they express themselves naturally, because the impact is profound. It's known that when you shed that light, why do you think they want to suppress it in the first place? Because if you're shedding your light, that's more of a chance for you to inspire someone else to shed their light in their unique way. And before you know it, people are shedding lights in ways that they can't be contained by the darkness anymore. They can't be contained by this demonic force that wants to control our every emotional urge, that wants to suppress our spiritual energy and hoard it for self and disseminate it as it sees fit. Because it's a force fuel that's never dead. It's never going to die. It's just a matter of where. It's like a transmission type of situation. Like, where is it going to be siphoned? Where is it going? What organ of the system, or what mechanics of the system, i.e. those 5 pillars, is it going to be used to fuel now and next, and in what way? The powers that be or were want to be able to keep control over that. If we, the people, start taking that control back into our hands and deciding what we are and are not going to be contributing to, it's at a great loss to those that have been siphoning this energy and this force fuel all along, that have been telling us what is societally acceptable and what is secure and what is success and what is normal, what is admissible and things of that nature. When you start to be a sovereign being, you can't be controlled by any external force. It's the two just don't align, So I'm supposing that maybe perhaps this is that expression here, that me reading off these energies, this is about what has been going on and what still is the intention, that you can get got in the most subtle ways and in the most gruesome ways. You can get got. You can get caught slipping just on account of you not being authentic to your divine calling. And that could be the most subtle thing. It doesn't have to be a star. It doesn't have to be to make some grand obtuse move of any sort. It's just a matter of, like I said, tuning into what your spirit is speaking to you and responding and reacting to it accordingly. Not sacrificing yourself for the sake of anyone or anything outside of yourself, ever, at this point in time, because one small self-sacrifice could ultimately mean the demise of your entire existence, and perhaps even the desecration of the legacy that you are leading, because someone behind you is dependent on you to do something a little different than what's been done before. And someone ahead of you, well, that is kind of behind you. Even your ancestors, really, that's what I'm talking about, actually. It's the ones that are coming beyond you that are going to ultimately be the benefactors of what you are setting up in real time. Your children, your children's children, so on and so forth. Our ancestors are looking to recoup their sacrifices in ways that they weren't able to be rewarded by in real life. We get to carry the torch for that exchange. So it's like double duty for those that accept it. It's a righteous right indeed. It's an honorable position to be in, and hence why it's such a vulnerable position to be in as well. So you can't take any aspect of your vitality for granted. Yes, be selfish as hell in this season in the ways that make sense, of course, and we know that right from wrong in our spirit. We know when we're sacrificing what really makes sense to us and when we're doing something as a surrender for those that we love. There's a difference. Surrender and sacrifice are two different energies. And one you do with love, the other you do in fear. If there's a fear for a decision that you feel grounded to make, then 9 times out of 10 is going against the grain of grace for yourself. If you're willing to do a thing because you love a person, place, or thing, and organically so and purely so, not fear of losing them, but just wanting to, the love of wanting to protect their best interest as you're protecting your own, that's something that has more of a potent power, something that's lasting, that ultimately does pave the way for generations to come. It doesn't stop short here and then create a cycle that ultimately, fuels more destruction and demise. Fear over love always. So just be careful out here. I didn't mean to go this long, but hopefully you found some connection to what I said today. Rest in power to Shanquella Robinson. I wonder if more will ever be developed of her case. I hope so, because I feel like there was still yet more justice to be served on her account. But perhaps it's even happening now, just in the way that it's incited me to share this message, that maybe someone might take, into account the ways that they may be self-sacrificing unjustifiably and do something different, so that her energy may not have been violated in vain in that regard, and that eventually perhaps there will be some light shed on these darker, well, it's inevitable, honestly, but it's just a matter of how we, the people, will receive it. Will you allow the wool to be pulled over your eyes? Like, that's crazy, that's not happening, to be labeled as some conspiracy theorist, when the truth is truly unveiled, because it will be, as it already is being so. Exposures are happening every day, but sometimes, like, the strangest things, they seem so far-fetched that you almost dismiss it. It's like, that can't, or you don't want to even really get into it because it's just too much to wrap your mind and your spirit around. I guess it doesn't matter to everybody's not meant to dive in and divulge every dark aspect of the underworkings of the world, for sure, but you definitely have the responsibility to protect your best interests by way of answering to your most supreme source and force that speaks through your spirit uniquely and specifically, individually. So, all right, that's it. I'm done. Thank you for listening. Best wishes to you and all that you do. Have a very prosperous and productive week ahead. Challenge yourself to see something, see something in a different light this week, maybe even within yourself, that you otherwise may be overlooked, or a possibility, a power within yourself that maybe you have, surrendered to some other source or some other power outside of you. Maybe in spirit and in truth, call in the totality of your power, so that you know that if nothing else, you can trust you to protect you. You may not be able to trust family, friends, and foes. You may not be able to trust your city, your state, your town. You may not even be able to trust the government. Who knows with how things are unfolding. But if you can find security and sanctity within your own spiritual self, having this human experience, that's an investment worth making. That's a reality worth cultivating, because nothing can really deconstruct that grounding. That's a firm foundation to build any legacy on, great or small. Okay, that'll be sustained for generations to come, just on account of having the mentality of being trustworthy in your own self beyond anything or anyone else. All right, so bless you again. Have a great rest of the night and a powerful week. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, peace.